Hello and welcome to Kamilla Singh Show. We haven't been in the studio for a few weeks, so we are back here, and this is probably the last recording of 2022. Happy holidays to all of you, those people that celebrate Christmas, and Happy New Year's, and Happy Hanukkah to all those Jewish families. They are celebrating Hanukkah and lighting up the candle. So with that, we are back in the studio to talk about politics, what has happened in the whole last few months and looking back for the whole 2022. So the panel is Eni Johanna. She's a school teacher. Glad that she's off today, so that's why she is able to come in the studio today. And she's an organizer, very political activist, and she's everywhere. And with her is Dimple Saran, and she's with the healthcare worker, has worked during COVID time. He's a political activist too, and also the founder of One Voice Canada. So with that, let's get these things started. So welcome both of you. We haven't seen both of you sitting side by side for a long time because you were busy or you were busy. But anyways, Annie has been with us all the time, all throughout the panel. So let's start. I think let's start in Surrey. Surrey always is a newsmaker, always makes the headline in the news. And now with the new, new council and mayor, I just have to take a deep breath. And they have said, that they were going to be, DS, Surrey Police Services, will cost about $134 million if they will go with them. And in the meantime, they are proposing that RCMP should stay in Surrey as a police or a law enforcement of choice. And they voted and they have submitted the final report to the government. So what do you think would be the next step? What will take place? Even for both of them, it's just like you are sitting on the cutting edge. You have a job today, you might not have a job tomorrow. And Lewinsky, who is the chief, he might not be in position unless you want to join Surrey. If that happens, if that's the way it's going to go. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll try to keep it short. Okay. Just a couple of points maybe. I think number one, that's a good point to raise. Hearing from a couple of people that I know that are involved in either police force, that there is that concern, right? Or almost the mistreatment in terms of like the politicization of policing and how police officers have felt that they've been treated. So I think that's really important, right? These are families, these are people that have jobs and trying to do their best, right? And meanwhile, the political powers that be. I think the second point that I can't answer that question. I don't think a lot of us can answer that question because the provincial government's thinking about regional policing as well, which won't come for a while because the RCMP is contracted. But so that's a bigger question of, so the mayor council might want to do certain things, but what about the province's actions, right? Once they have their report, that becomes a bigger piece of the story in terms of overall in BC, right? I don't know what the answer is. I think I always go back to the idea that it felt to me was always going to be a mix because you have the larger like IHIT and all these other pieces. It was a transition report, right? The original one. And the idea that we would always be contracting out some services. So I don't know. My point of view is always about how do we get away from policing? How do we get to healthier communities and safer communities so that we can take care of each other in different ways? But as to what it means in terms of the policing we have, that's really a question that needs to be resolved at higher levels, in my opinion.
Right. And so, in some aspects I agree with Annie here. But the main, I think, perspective that I like to look at is when we look at municipalities across Canada, Surrey is number 7 as the largest city. Every other municipality at such a capacity has their own municipal policing. And so, they're able to cater to certain needs of their own community that the RCMP may not be able to. Not to say, again, like Annie, I have friends in RCMP and in Surrey policing. And I think it's very important to recognize that we should have that capability of working together. in certain aspects where we may need the RCMP, but in other areas we may need more of a municipal sort of, capacity of policing. When it comes to municipal policing, I think the other important factor is, like we've mentioned, is that these are families we're talking about. Now that this policing has been put in transition, what does it mean for those officers who've given up other duties and jobs and have now reported as Surrey Police Services? They may be at stake to lose their jobs, so we have to consider that. And the other thing is, will they be willing and wanting to go back to RCMP? Now, RCMP is controlled as a federal level, right? And so RCMP officers are deployed all over the place in Canada. Whereas Surrey Policing Services would be more local. The authority would be laying with the municipal kind of region, provincial regions, when it comes to the political arena of things. So I think it's very important to consider that when we have emergencies across Canada, our RCMP officers can be deployed to other areas, making less individuals on the ground to do the service that they should be for Surrey. Where Surrey Policing can ultimately say, hey, we need our officers on the ground. We're not able to send them out. So there's some sort of policies and procedures that are a little bit different on both levels when it comes to municipal and federal level policing. So I think, and then that's where the provincial sort of comes in that decision making. Each province is different. Their needs are different. What we cater to is different. What may be required in one province or city may not be required in another province or city, depending on the population and the vulnerability of that city or province. And so I think ultimately it's up to the province to make that call and decide, what is right for BC and how they would like to go forward. And that transition report speaks for itself.
Mike Farnworth has a big job in his plate, and he wants the NDP to be elected in 2024. I mean, there's election year coming too, so there is a lot of stuff on the stake for whatever decision. They're not going to make both happy. They have to bite the bullet and make a decision. That's one thing, right? I mean, that will be the only thing. And my point, I thought, leave it up to the people of Surrey. Get a referendum done whether they want this or they want that. So every 4 years when a new mayor is coming, they don't even say, okay, vote for me, I'll do this, vote for me, I'll do this. And this is where we have come between two mayors in last 6, 7 years. Okay, so
I'm glad you said that. I think it's up to the people at the end.
Yeah,
and it's also like what's happening in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, right.
Because if we see, crimes or mental health, whatever the issues might be, I don't want that to be lost to politics, right? Like I want a safe and healthy Surrey. That's the bottom line, right?
100%.
So whatever we can do to have that voice heard, more than these little choices, right? I'm not saying it's little, but more than that choice, that's what should matter. That's what we should be voting for, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing to help the community? Whatever the label is, at the end of the day, that's a whole other thing. Don't promise that the RCMP will do better or SPD will do better, but then the neighborhoods stay the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. So the next thing, switching the topic, we're going to talk about the snowfall. There was a big huge snowfall on November 28th, where everybody and people knew it was all announced in the weather because I watch TV, I watch weather. There were no plows. I'm not talking about one city, it's everybody. The Metro Vancouver was under, not lockdown, but under snowed down. And people were stuck for 14 hours on the highway or on the bridges and all that. So what do you say? Doesn't these people have not funding or equipment to think that maybe the snow would fall? And there were so many accidents and things like that. What went wrong there? And the snow is gonna fall. We are in winter. Do you think these people prepare ahead? Everybody has a budget.
I'm curious. I was born in Montreal, and I still remember the snow days there, and the blizzards, and it's a lot harsher there, right?
Of course.
And I'm just curious, why can't we have a healthier snow budget? Like what does it mean to increase the budget, right? Because it doesn't mean you're always going to use it, right? I know Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, it's shifting, right? Some years we get a lot, some years there's almost nothing. I think 2015 there was not a single day of snowfall in the year,
and
right?
$4 million is the budget for Metro Vancouver, and Montreal is 184.
So I'm just
million.
curious.
So because of
what
the size,
if we doubled it, or I mean, whatever the amount might be, because it doesn't mean you use it, right? It could be reallocated, right? I just wonder, because yes, I had a lot of people that I knew. Yeah, it wasn't even a lockdown. It was stuck in the middle of the highway, in the middle, bridges being shut down, completely cutting off Surrey, right, and other areas. People could have died, right? It could have been so much worse than what it was. So I think it is a crisis issue, and I just want to see a healthier budget so that we're not scrambling. With the understanding that, budgets are there, there's budget lines, right? You use what you need, and then go from there. But keeping it at what seems to be a bare minimum doesn't seem to be enough now that we've had several, a couple of years. But yeah, that November 28th was definitely, I was shocked by it.
Yeah.
Because I was even like, oh, I'll get home. It took me an hour to get home. It's usually a 10-minute drive for me, right? So it was for everybody, and all of us left early. We tried to take precautions, but the roads were of such state that very quickly. I mean, yes, people can drive better, get snow tires, all of that.
Yeah.
But I think the larger issue is if there's more money, then at least, that the larger issues of highways, bridges, those can be taken care of. I think that has very little to do with snow tires or people driving.
Yeah.
I was one of the ones unfortunately stuck. So I was stuck for a good 8-9 hours that day, between Vancouver and Surrey. And I agree with Annie. It was a crisis at that point. It was, people were on the roads without food, without bathrooms, some may have had illnesses like diabetes or other things that could have progressed into worse emergency situations. I think the dynamics at play come to emergency preparedness.
Yes.
How well prepared is BC for any emergency that takes place, whether it's being snowed down, whether it's earthquake, whether it's whatever it is? What kind of budgets are in place? What kind of things are we implementing to prevent versus intervene after the fact? We had Gurdwaras and mandirs step up that day, and churches and other neighbors, families going out and helping and providing food to those that were stuck. We had parking lots available for those that were stuck, wanted to sleep overnight, or left their cars abandoned.
Or use the washroom for that matter,
Use the washroom, and many had abandoned their cars, vehicles that day. They had to get home to their kids and other seniors and families. I think, just watching that blew me away. It was like, what are the dynamics around emergency preparedness in BC? And what are the budgets allocated towards each thing? We really need to look into that at a political level and make sure that we are well prepared and preventative measures are there. And like you said, what happened to the Ministry of Transportation? What happened to each of the municipalities when it came to just even simple salting down everything in advance? Shoveling and plowing things so that this wouldn't take place. So I think it was a real lack of communication, lack of preparedness, and a lack of being out there helping individuals out. Yeah.
And I think it may be a time right now for all the cities or municipalities to have a regional kind of snow removal services.
Yes.
It's not like Surrey, this is the border of Surrey, New West, Delta, and all that. And that's where it got very confused, right? I think everybody start looking at the books and their papers, and then they say, oh, the truck couldn't get there because all the roads were all blocked by people. It was an excuse. I think this could have prepared the roads long before the people got stuck on the roads.
And we do live regionally, right?
Yes.
Most of us don't work and live in the same city.
Same city.
I'm very lucky, but a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
So we have to realize that too, right? Yeah. People's commutes don't look like within a city. Yeah. So, where are the plows, right?
Yeah.
Or do you have things stationed at different bridges and, different access points? Because those people need to cross every single day. Twice, so all of that needs to be, and again, that might be more expensive.
Yeah.
So changing that, we have a new premier right now, David Eby, and as soon as he got into power, he's making an announcement pretty well every second day, I would say. The first announcement he want to freeze ICBC, and also housing. I think he made an announcement of 94 new modular housing downtown east side and all that. So there is announcements coming after announcement. But sometimes you have to think about, he was a housing critic before. He was housing was
Housing
under his
minister, yeah,
ministry,
yeah.
and he was also ICBC as well. So now, just because he's elected as or appointed as a premier, he's making all the changes that he could have done it long before that. So, do you think he is preparing to get elected next time? I mean, it's coming. It's 2024, right? Or 2023, I think, next provincial election.
Yeah, I would expect a new premier to tell us what they're going to do, right? Or
Yeah.
where their priorities lie. I know it seems like a lot, but I think especially with, I mean, the reality is we have like a two-party system right now.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, the Liberals have questions, and as do people. Right? And so I think it's only fair. Yes, he's held many important, crucial portfolios.
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting. It's not just one person making the decisions, right? I mean, yes, they're the head, but it's so much more complicated than that, right? So it's not that he could have done all of that by himself beforehand, but certainly if there's new priorities or more willingness to take stronger action. I would like to hear that from any premier. Sorry, from any leader, right? So I'm glad they're stepping forward and not waiting. I think these are all really important issues that need to be dealt with. And 90, 94, that's not a lot.
No,
it's a
it is
start.
not very
It's
many.
something. But and a lot of the other announcements, I think there's so much more to this, and I'm sure there's more to come. I would anticipate the next budget, all of that will be a lot more specific as to details on many other portfolios as well. And with a new cabinet, I think again it's important to kind of see, again where those priorities are for each of those ministries. Yeah.
Yeah, and typically that's what happens when you get elected. The core background you have, the experience you have, you try to bring it onto the table initially because that's what you have been passionate about and bringing into the forefront in your certain areas, and trying to make sure that that is dealt with, sometimes is the political way to go. And then bringing around the other diversity of different areas and subject matters. Typically that's how leaders present themselves when they are elected or appointed, is to stand on ground for what they were initially known for or their platform was about, right? And so I do see him leading that same way. As to building upon that leadership, which ways we're going to go, well, we'll just have to see, because he's quite new at this point. And, I think you're right. The platform for building that foundation starts now. And so typically that's what a political leader will do, is if they want to be reelected next term or next time for what they are known to be about, then this is the route they take, is to present certain areas and expertise, and then after that build upon it with the cabinet that they have in place for different areas and subject matters. And I'm kind of I am pleased with the cabinet announcements, the different people and individuals who have been placed into those appointed areas, and I think they will, really do well, and from their backgrounds that we have seen so far, yeah.
That would have been my next question. What do you think of the new appointment of different? There is, for the first time since 1970s, I think we have a housing minister, which we had never had. All the money was poured into BC Housing, and BC Housing was allocating all the funds, who they like, who they don't like, and they were building all that, and nothing happened between. And he fired all the directors in there. So there is a housing minister, with Ravi Kalan. He's new in this too, and he's new to politics anyways. But our Rachana Singh is appointed as the Minister of Education. So there is about 7 South Asian being appointed as the ministers. And Nikki Sharma, AG, it's all good, right? So this is a very mixed, I think he thought long before he pointed people out. And I think even Jagrup Bra got appointed as trade minister or something. Which poor guy has never had any positions before that. So what do you say? Is it all good? And
I like Dupinder's point to the idea of experience, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, some of these people might be newer, but nonetheless, like Nikki Sharma, her background as a lawyer dealing with Indigenous, I think that's super important to the role of Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure she'll have many people to advise her in other areas that she might be newer to, right? Mm-hmm. Rachna is exciting. You know, she was doing a lot of good work as a parliamentary secretary in anti-racism. Yeah. And I think that's really important for, as an educator. Yeah. This is my ministry, right? This is my employer. Yeah. Yeah. And certainly we have issues, but at the same time, I'm excited to see she has that progressive lens, and as we seek to really make education better, I think Rachna will be open to listening. Yeah. Right? How that unfolds, we'll see, but definitely open to listening, and to perhaps understand the needs of education for all learners, because education could just be, people think it's one way, but it's so much more complex than that. And Ravi, for his newness, still has had some pretty high profile portfolios so far, and seems to have been doing a good job. And again, to me, a good politician is one that listens.
Well, that listens.
I don't need an ideologue. I don't need someone that only goes one way. Yeah. I want them to be able to listen to everyone and then come to the table with ideas that will bring us forward. Yeah. So they all those positions are rather difficult, and we will see what happens, right? And how they roll it out, right? Yeah. That's going to be, not just the promises, but what about the money? What about the resources? What about whatever it might look like, right? I think that's going to be where we have to hold them accountable, that they need to keep their promises.
Yeah, and I agree with Annie. Even though they're new to their leadership areas, they have experience in the political arena now. It's been some time. They have proven to be, sort of presenting and progressing and doing the things that are in betterment of society overall. So whether it comes to Ravi, Rachna, Nikki, it doesn't really matter if you look at their backgrounds. They've been able to accommodate things for BC that are required. They have been progressive in their thinking pattern. They have brought forward some new ideas which weren't there implemented before. So I think coming to a new table doesn't necessarily mean that they may not be able to handle that scenario or that position. I think, in fact, it'll give them something to work with and build upon. And, when we speak of Rachna Singh, she's amazing. Yeah. Well-educated herself, and then very much bringing up a family in BC herself, right? Same with Ravi. So I think these are important sort of factors to look at, that they manage well themselves in their daily lives and their personal lives, along with in the political fields. And so bringing that experience to the forefront is very important. And diversity, as you mentioned, 7 South Asians being elected and appointed that way, is a huge, deal for us in Canada. Yeah. Multiculturalism, anti-racism, and all the bigotry that we've been, kind of opposing to. And people like us, Annie and I, who are activists out there on these kind of sort of core issues, it helps us to feel a little bit more relieved that we are getting proper and sort of representation in those particular fields. Yeah.
So do you think there was a week, and I think it's a couple of weeks ago, that there were 3 murders of 3 women started in Surrey and Coquitlam and North Vancouver. And this was a relationship sort of violence. And so I am just thinking, I'm sitting and looking at it when I was looking at the news there. Do you think this organization that service the women, or counseling or transition houses and all that, do you think the more funding poured towards them would have avoided that? Do you think there is lack of funding and we have forgotten that violence against women has been in the backbench and gone away and it's not going to happen? But 3 murders in a week, I think is too many. Even 1 was too many, 3 in a week. And I think they also we don't have a Ministry of Women's Equality or anything like that. But I think with this government, maybe they should have even secretary or something that may be able to look at where the funds need to go to do outreach and education.
BWSS, Battered Women Support Services, that pointed out that one of the murders, there was a restraining order on the husband, right? And yet still, I'm sorry, I might have the wrong word there, but there was an order of some kind, and still that murder occurred. So I think you're not wrong. When I say funding and resources, again, it's not just about money, right? It's how you apply that money and where it goes to. And certainly there's a lack of that. Yeah. The larger pressures in our society, we know that this is not necessarily just a husband and wife issue, right? Yeah. This has to do around stressors, right? Economics. There's so many different things. I'm so sorry. Is that my phone? No. Okay, never mind. Sorry. That we need to look at all those factors. Mm-hmm. So I would highly hope, I would hope that there's a larger investigation into this. But women are not equal yet. Yeah. That's the bottom line. There's still a lot of patriarchal, misogynistic thinking in our communities. Mm-hmm. I teach high school. Mm-hmm. I see it, right? I'm sorry, right? It's there. And it's not that these are bad human beings. Mm-hmm. It's just that the way we're told that women should be, men should be, right? These are all like boxes that we're forced to live in. Yeah. Add stress to that, add pressure to that, and then you start to see violence really explode. I do think this is a men's issue also, right? So in anything we do that's like gendered violence, domestic violence, we need to make sure that all genders are involved in that conversation. Yes. So it's not just, there's a very famous saying, don't rape rather than don't get raped, right? And the idea being that you're really looking to the systemic issues of telling people that violence is not the answer. Yeah. That's it, right? Not telling women, here's how to survive violence. Yeah. Of course we need that, as we see. But certainly that's not going to stop these incidences. You're just going to keep seeing it at different points in time.
Yeah, and again, that's where funding falls in place, is a prevention on the sort of systemic issue that we have. Funding plays a big role in mental health. It plays a big role in education and awareness of, and the knowledge we're putting out there for others. And that, again, includes all genders. And I think, like we say, raising boys right, compared to saying to the daughter, don't wear that. It's the mentality that we have in our society that needs to be kind of switched, right? It's an ongoing issue, always has been, and it's sad to say that yes, we lose our daughters and we lose our women, but just as much as I'd like to also point out, there are men who also face similar kind of abuse, right? We just don't see it as often. It's occasional, and you may, and then also
so
men.
I'm looking at the clock. That's how we are going over time.
Yes. So generally, it's all people need to be in that conversation, and we need to determine where those funds should be allocated. You're right.
Thank you, both of you, for coming in and giving your insight about all these topics that we have suggested. And Happy New Year's and Happy Holidays to all of you. And stay safe, stay healthy, take care of your family, and we'll see each other again on the same panel next week. Thank you.